Hi friends, welcome to the new series of videos. In these videos, we will discuss about the physics concepts of class 8th, 9th and 10th of NCERT. In every competitive exam, there is one common syllabus for physics, that is NCERT up to class 10. So we are providing important points at the end of this video. So please watch the video till the end. Without wasting any time, let us start our session, that is force and pressure. Before going to that, we will discuss some basic concepts of force and pressure. So force and pressure. Force is a pull or a push that changes or tends to changes the state of rest or uniform motion. So force is either a pull or a force that changes the trend or tends, or it will tend to change the state of a body at rest or a uniform motion, or it will change the direction or a shape. So force force have two types of force. We have two types of forces, that is pulling force and pushing force. In pulling force, when an object is moving away from the applied of force, so when the object is moved away from the applied force is known as pulling force. This one is the example for pulling force. And pushing force. Pushing force is nothing but when an object is moving towards the applier of force. This one is example for pushing force. So in the force, we have two types of force, that is pulling force and pushing force. Next one, force has both magnitude and direction. So force will have both magnitude and direction. So it is known as vector quantity. So force will have both magnitude and direction. So it has vector quantity. This one is important point. So some of the next point is some of the vector quantities are, so for the vector quantities we have displacement, velocity and acceleration are some of the vector quantities. Coming to the next point, SI unit. SI unit of force is Newton. So SI unit of force is Newton. Next point, force arises. Actually, force arises due to the interaction between two bodies. So force will arise due to interaction of two bodies. So next one, force applied in the same direction. So force applied, let us see what will happen if the force will applied in the same direction. If we apply the force in the same direction, what will happen? Force applied on an object in the same direction add to one another in the applied direction. In the applied direction, force will add. So if we apply 1 Newton here and 1 Newton here, so this will sum up and form 2 Newtons. So here the magnitude is 2 Newtons and direction is force applied direction. Actually we are applying from one direction, so the direction of this force is applied direction. Next, force applied in opposite direction. If we applied the force in opposite direction, we will have two cases. In the first case, when two person pushing the box in opposite direction with magnitude of 1 Newton each, then resultant force, if the two persons, if we have two persons, so here we have two persons, person 1 and person 2, so they are pushing in the opposite direction. So one is pushing like this and another one is pushing like this. Then the resultant force, if the person is 1 Newton, he is applying 1 Newton and he is also applying 1 Newton, then the resultant or the net force equal to 0 Newtons. So it will cancel the both forces and output is net force is 0 Newton. In the second case, if one person applied 10 Newtons and other person applied 6 Newtons, then block will start moving towards the higher direction. So what it is meant, if a person is applying 10 Newtons here and another person is applying 9 Newtons, so the block will start moving in the direction, in the direction. So he is trying to pull this with 10 newtons and he is trying to pull this with 6 newtons. Then the block will move in the direction of higher magnitude force. So the net force equal to 10 minus 6 newtons, that is 4 newtons. Here the magnitude is 4 newtons and the direction is towards the higher magnitude force. Okay, here what are the effects of force? First point is force can change the state of the motion. As we discussed, force can change the state of the motion. If a block is lying on a ground, so box is lying on a ground, so we are applying some 10 newtons of force in this direction. So the block will start moving from point P1 to P2. So that is this point. Force can changes the state of motion. So here initially it is in rest point, so it will change the direction. It will move from point 1 to point 2. So it will change the state. So force can changes the shape of an object. What we can discuss, if you have a ball and we are applying some force into this ball, then the ball initially in this position, after applying some force, it will take this point. So with the force we can change the shape of the object. So force can changes the state of motion. Force actually changes the motion. So first one is motion. Rest state. A object is in rest unless we apply a force. If there is one block laying on the ground, so if you won't apply any force, it will be in the rest position. So it is one of the type in the motion, rest state. Next, moving state. A object is moving when applied a force on it. So same example, we have a block here, it is in rest. When we are applying some force, then it will start moving to point 1 to point 2. So it is started moving from point 1 to point 2. Next, force can change the shape of an object. As we discussed, let us take a balloon. And apply force on both sides. We will apply the force on both sides. So by pressurizing with your hands, if you think it is your hand, so if you are trying to push the ball, then it will initially in this position. After applying the force, it will change to this direction. Then the force will automatically change the shape of the balloon. So it will change, force will change the shape of a balloon. So coming to the type of contact forces, so we have contact forces. Contact force is nothing but the force acts on a body when the source of force is in actual contact with the body. The point where the force is applied on the object is called as point of application of force or point of contact. So it is known as contact force. So one of the types in the contact force, we will have muscular force, that is the force exerted by the muscles of a body. We make use of muscle force of animals like bullocks and horses. So muscular force is a force, we can say we can take an example like bullocks and horse. With the help of these powers, we can generate some force called muscular force. Example for this is lifting a book laying on a table. So if a book is laying on a table, so ground, we can say ground, so we can lift it with our muscular force. Next, holding a bucket of water. If you have a bucket like this, so if we hold this, it is initially it is a ground, and after that we can lift it off. So coming to the next force, it is Frictional force. What is meant by frictional force? It can be explained with a better example, like initially there is a block. So this block is laying on the ground. Initially this block is in rest position. So if we apply some force from here, it need to go somewhere here at infinity distance. But when we are moving this block, it is going to some position here. So what is the force it opposing by the ground on the body, on the block, to oppose the motion? This some force from the ground will act on this block. This is known as frictional force. So frictional force is a force that opposes the motion of an object, is known as frictional force. So we can, examples are a ball rolling on the ground, gradually slow down and finally come to rest. So a block rolling on the ground, a ball will roll on the ground, and finally at some point of the time or some distance it will come to the rest position due to the frictional force acting on the opposite direction. So generally frictional force will act in the opposite direction of applied force. Next one is, while stopping a pedal of bicycle, it's gradually slow down and finally come to rest. So it is a good examples for frictional forces. Next one, type of non-contact forces. Actually we saw the contact forces. Now we will discuss about non-contact forces. That is non-contact. Let us see what is non-contact forces. Non-contact forces are the forces which do not involve physically contact between two bodies on which there acts. So let us see what are the types of non-contact forces. Non-contact forces are magnetic force. First one is magnetic force. So the concept behind this magnetic force, if we have a magnet, if we have two magnets, so magnet 1 and magnet 2, so magnet extracts a non-contact force on object made of iron, steel or nickel or a cobalt. We will see with an example. So what is example? In opposite poles of two magnets attracts each other and same poles will repel each other. So opposite poles of two magnets will attract. So if we have north pole here, south pole here, after that south pole and north pole, then the magnet will finally come in this way. This will got attract M1 and M2. So this is known as magnetic force. So magnetic force will have the power to absorb some object. If we have a object of with a steel body, steel, and here we have magnet, then here there will be a magnetic flux of this magnet and it will attract the steel ball towards it. So after that electrostatic force. What is meant by electrostatic force? Force which results due to the repulsion of same charges of attraction of opposite charges is known as electrostatic force. What is meant by gravitational force? Gravitational force is a force that exists between any two bodies by virtue of their masses. So we can say here there is a note point, that is gravity is not a property of earth alone. So we can take one example, like we have a floor and we have a tree here. So one person climb to the tree and drop a ball, and then the ball will come down due to the gravitational force of the earth. So here what is the note point and important point is, gravity is not a property of the earth. So due to the property of the earth, it is coming to the ground, but it is not a basic property of the earth. In fact, every body in the earth universe, whether they small or they large, exists a force on every object. So this is known as gravitational force. So coming to the important concept, here up to this we have learned about what is meant by force. Now we will discuss about pressure. What is meant by pressure? Pressure is force acting on a unit area of the surface is known as a pressure. So pressure we can define as force per area on which it acts. So pressure equal to force by area, and the SI units of pressure is pascals, and here this one is important, like 1 pascal equal to 1 Newton per meter square. So force equal to Newton and area equal to meter square. So the units of the force is Newton per meter square, which is also known as pascal. Note here, one of the note point is area is in denominator, so the area increase then the pressure will decrease. How? So area in the denominator, so the area increase then pressure increase. Actually pressure equal to force by area. If we increase the area, then the pressure will force will got decrease, then automatically it will affect the pressure, so pressure will also decrease. Coming to the pressure exerted by liquids and gases. What is the pressure exerted by the liquids and gases? Are liquid and gases can also be exerts pressures on inner walls of the container in which they are kept. And the next point is atmospheric pressure. So atmospheric pressure is the pressure exerted by the air is known as, actually the pressure exerted by the air is known as atmospheric pressure. Second one, the pressure inside our body is exactly equal to the atmospheric pressure and annuals the pressure acts from outside. So atmospheric pressure is the pressure exerted by the air. In the air we have atmospheric pressure. So coming to the important part of this lecture, that is bullet points to be remembered. So what is meant by force? Force could be a pull or a push. So second point, a force arises due to the interaction between two bodies. So force arises due to the interaction of two bodies. Next point, force has both magnitude and direction. So force is a vector quantity. Next, a change in the speed of an object or the direction of its motion or the body implies a change or in its shape. Actually the change in the speed, if we apply the force on with some speed, it will changes the shape of that object. So force will change the object shapes. So a force can act on an object with or without being in contact with it. So force can be acts on an object with or without contact with it. Next important point is force per unit area is known as pressure. So remember, force equal pressure equal to force by area. So pressure force is in Newton and area in meter square. So Newton per meter square is also known as Pascal. Next point, liquid and gases can also exist pressure on inner walls of container in which they are kept. Next point, the pressure exerted by the air is known as atmospheric pressure. This one is important point. Okay friends, thank you so much for watching this video. Please do like, share and comment. In the upcoming session, we will discuss about concept of force and pressure. In the next session, we will discuss about some bits of force and pressure. Thank you.